In this session, folks, Zero Waste Scotland will explore the many benefits of the circular economy and how small changes can ladder up to give us global results that could help save the planet. We're going to hear from Louise McGregor. Louise is Head of Customer Service and Support for Zero Waste Scotland, one of our favourite partner organisations. Louise has worked for Zero Waste Scotland for over 11 years before taking her current role in 2021. Louise leads a number of areas covering a wide range of services enabling the circular economy, covering a wide range of services enabling the circular economy, capabilities and models with partners and stakeholders across regional, public and private sector and educational partners. And I'm going to hand over to Louise so that we can hear from her today. So thank you, Louise.
Great, many thanks, Stephen. And if you just bear with me one moment while I try and share my my screen. Let's see. Right, hopefully everybody can see that.
Perfect.
Good, good. Right, well, thank you very much for your introduction, Stephen. And yeah, as Stephen said, I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so really just trying to give you a bit of a flavour of some of the work that Zero Waste Scotland has been doing to drive the circular economy in Scotland, focusing both on our work at a regional level, but also on some of our circular procurement work as well. And what I'll try and do is just draw out a few examples and showcase some of the benefits really as we see them from to local authorities and to the wider public sector. And also I'll finish by pointing you towards a few tools and what have you that may be able to help going forward. So hopefully the second slides come up. I'm sure Stephen will shout if there's any problems. So for those of you who don't know Zero Waste Scotland, I think the slide explains what our purpose is. We are a not-for-profit organisation. We're funded by the Scottish Government, and actually at the moment also we get some funding from the European Regional Development Fund as well. And we are champions of the circular economy, and so very much focused on ensuring the sustainable use of products and materials. And over many years, I suppose, we've been working closely with Scotland's private and public sector to drive and support implementation of circular business models. And I'm sure most of you will be aware of kind of the circular principles. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation describe it in three ways. There's kind of three key sort of principles. The first being to design out waste and pollution from everything that we produce, to keep products and materials in use for as long as possible, and so maintain the kind of carbon value of them, and also to regenerate natural systems. So our corporate plan sets out how we intend or how we are leading Scotland to use products and resources responsibly. And we've got three main approaches. Developing evidence, really that's to help inform policy and also our own actions. And I'll give some examples of some of the evidence that we've been involved with developing shortly. Inspiring by demonstration, and this includes sort of working with different businesses and different organisations, and some of the work that my team does looking at helping businesses to identify and develop new circular business models, and then helping to showcase those. And then finally, working to influence others through collaboration and partnership. And, you know, that's with a wide range of organisations such as large corporates, local authorities, National Health Service, and hopefully some of our cities and regions work that I'm going to talk to you about shortly will give you some examples of how we try to do that in partnership. So, at a national level, as I said, we've developed, or we're still developing in some cases actually, some estimates of how circular Scotland is and what material we use in Scotland. And to measure this, we use a carbon footprint tool, which is, I'm sure most of you are aware, it's a widely used measure, and it's really about the total amount of greenhouse gases that are released in the production and consumption of goods and services that are used in Scotland, wherever those carbon emissions come from, so whatever country or wherever in the world that they're produced. So we had a close look at Scotland's carbon footprint, really to inform our corporate plan and to inform the activities that we wanted to do over the next few years. And what we found when we did that was that about 4/5, 80% or so of the emissions or the carbon footprint, Scotland's carbon footprint, comes from the products and resources that we consume here in Scotland. And the slide just sort of indicates the much smaller proportions within the carbon footprint measure of kind of the energy and work waste sectors. So the real emphasis for us is on consumption. So the second piece of research that we did was our material flow accounts, which we published, I think it was last June actually, and that was based on 2017 data in Scotland. We looked at the materials flowing into and out of Scotland, and it showed that actually on average, individuals in Scotland consume 18.4 tonnes of materials per year, which seems an enormous amount. And actually, if you compare this to what the UN considers to be a sustainable level of consumption, around 8 tonnes per year, you'll see that there's actually a long way to go. We've got to reduce it by more than half to get our footprint to sustainable levels. So the final bit of national level evidence that we're currently working on, and we hope to publish the results of this a little bit later this year, is Scotland's Circularity Gap Report. And this will provide a little bit of a measure and an index and a way of tracking progress really on how circular Scotland's economy currently is. Yes, it will allow us to monitor and track, and also it allows us to benchmark Scotland against other countries and hopefully identify big areas, big wins. And some of the other countries that have been through that, and there's been a range of results from these, are Austria, the Netherlands, Norway and Quebec, and I think and other countries are also going to be coming and doing similar. So the evidence that I've just talked about, the material flow accounts, the carbon footprinting work, and this circularity gap report, are really only possible at a national level because of the data that's available at a national scale. But we do, however, recognise that there are regional variations across Scotland. And so that kind of leads us nicely on to the kind of reason and the rationale, I suppose, for our taking a more regional approach and our Circular Cities and Regions programme. And by doing this, what we're hoping to do is really help each region to develop their own vision and approach for the circular economy, and also to build on the particular opportunities that have been highlighted through some of that national evidence building that I've mentioned. And also, we hope that by sort of working at a more regional level, it'll help us as Zero Waste Scotland to tailor our support depending on the various regional priorities across the country. And I think this is very much an example of how we work in collaboration and in partnership to influence different organisations and different regions to take a more joined up approach to the circular economy across that region. So we've taken a very flexible approach. We work with a range of different organisations in each sort of regional area, such as local authorities, Chamber of Commerce, universities, enterprise agencies, really to do two things: to raise awareness of the circular economy, and then also to help embed circular economy principles locally in sort of policy, in strategy and in service delivery. And to date, I think it's since about 2017 actually been working specifically with 5 regions: Glasgow, Edinburgh, Tayside, Highlands and Islands and the North East. But we're not just limited to those. Obviously, we do work across other parts of Scotland as well. But just by way of an example, in Glasgow, we've worked in partnership with the Chambers of Commerce and the City Council, both on the Circular Glasgow initiative, which has been working with businesses to try and innovate and design with circular economy in mind. And we've also been supporting the City Council in the delivery of their circular economy route map in Glasgow as well. And then in Highlands Islands, taken a slightly different approach, where we've worked in partnership with Highlands and Islands Enterprise, really to explore opportunities in key sectors such as food and drink, tourism and energy. So you can see we just take a slightly different approach depending on the partners that are available and those that are kind of keen to work with us. And what we're doing at the moment is using our experiences from across this regional work to develop a bit of a framework to help guide local authorities and on implementing circular economy approaches and how to drive them in their regional area. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in due course. We think there's a range of benefits across society, including for local authorities from taking a more circular approach, and we've listed a few here. And I suppose we're particularly keen to make sure that we do build on the kind of the regional work we're doing and encourage really an interconnected network of circular cities and regions so that we can share learnings, we can identify synergies, and we can really optimise the benefits across the whole of Scotland. And I think you'll hopefully agree that with the current cost of living crisis and the inflation in raw materials, some more raw material costs, that the circular economy is increasingly becoming an economic as well as an environmental imperative. So you can see that a couple of the benefits there are around reduced costs and opportunities. And a couple of very small examples, and this kind of reflects what Stephen said about the small things that we can do to build up to the kind of the larger things, is thinking about reusing assets, which will save costs both in purchasing new but also in reducing your waste disposal costs. And then things like considering long-term management of buildings at the design stage to lead to kind of lower operating costs overall over the time frame of the building. So what I wanted to just mention now in a bit more detail is some of the work we've been doing with Glasgow, which was a study that the OECD undertook for us, which we actually launched just at the back end of last year during COP26. And the intention of this was to really look at the opportunities across Glasgow, but also provide a bit of scrutiny from an international perspective on what Glasgow is doing and how that compared to other countries and other areas. The report and the study really kind of recognised the progress made, but it also drew out some recommendations for consideration in Glasgow. And it's some of these considerations and recommendations, particularly around sort of 12 governance dimensions, which are kind of the things shown in the circles around the larger circle there on the slide. And we're using these recommendations really and these dimensions, governance dimensions, to inform the framework guide that we're pulling together for local authorities. And one of the three things that were kind of identified as priorities really within the OECD work were mainly around the promotional segment of that chart, roles and responsibilities and strategic vision, but also around the enabling and capacity building. So the OECD work kind of showed the kind of three main roles that anybody driving circular economy across a region or in a particular area can act in different ways to do this. So the first one is about acting as a promoter, and this is promoting the circular economy, acting as a role model and providing clear information and establishing goals and targets. And this was kind of the priority area really that came out of the Glasgow work. So thinking about roles and responsibilities, really defining who does what and very much leading by example and showing the way for others. And also having a strategic vision, so making sure that a circular economy strategy is developed with clear goals and actions and ways of measuring that and seeing progress. And as well, awareness and transparency was highlighted there. So that was really to do with promoting a circular economy more widely, making sure the culture is right and enhancing trust across the different actors in that area. So promoter is really a really strong role for a local authority to play or other organisations within a regional setting. The next one was a sort of facilitator, and this is really about enabling connections and dialogue between organisations and making sure infrastructure is in place for circular businesses to thrive. So that could be sort of support infrastructure as well as kind of hard infrastructure. And then finally, being an enabler, which is really about enabling conditions and making sure that conditions are right for circular economy transition to happen in a region. So an example here could be creating capacity in individuals to rise to the challenge, to understand what the circular economy is about, and also financing the right sorts of activities in a region. So as I mentioned, I'm planning to issue a local authority framework based around these kind of three sort of areas of activity. And there'll be an assessment tool as well available. And we're hoping to have that available next month in June, if you're interested. And the intention is to help local authorities really embed circular economy both into their own operations, but also to drive it in a wider region. But as I say, this framework isn't just restricted to local authorities. And actually, I'm going on now to talk a little bit about circular procurement in the rest of my presentation. But this promoter, facilitator, enable approach can be used to drive that too. So in terms of promoting circular procurement, we could learn from others through knowledge transfer, working on joint projects, and facilitating. We can work collaboratively and proactively really to identify forthcoming procurements and identify opportunities within those for more circular approaches. And then enabling is thinking about how we can train staff on circular economy, how that training might fit with procurement procedures, and really understanding and being aware of what circular products and services are available and what tools are available to help. So hopefully that leads me kind of neatly on to circular procurement. And I think in the context of the circular economy, which is all about ensuring that we consume in a much more responsible way, we really can't ignore the role of procurement. And that's why it's so important at both a national and a regional level. And it's about thinking about the whole life cycle, really, at the start of any procurement process. And circular procurement really provides innovative performance or usage-based business models, giving access to services and products rather than purely thinking about ownership. And it's about making decisions early in the procurement process, as the slide says, and particularly as an example, ensuring that, for example, that products that you may buy are suitable at the end of their first life to be repaired or refurbished or reused. So thinking about that right at the front. And I think one of the other things that we're keen to kind of underline with circular procurement, that actually it can really add value to some of those business relationships with customers and suppliers, and extending or enhancing those kind of long-term relationships and building better relationships over time. And what the slide also does here is just indicate really not just what the environmental benefits are, which I think are obvious and what we've already touched on, but that actually there are economic gains to be made, material cost savings, as I've mentioned before, perhaps mitigating price rises across supply chains, and really trying to provide best value and efficiency savings. But also there's some social wins as well, society wins. So often circular products and services are available and can be sourced at more local level. And for example, repair, reuse and maintenance activities are often done by local businesses. So there can be some real social benefits too. And obviously the environmental ones, we've already touched on the carbon footprint savings and all the ones that are listed on the slide there. And I think this was a good opportunity just to mention an example of circular procurement really in action on the with Scotland Excel on the framework for the domestic furniture and furnishings contract. So there's a reuse lot within that, and the reuse consortium, which is coordinated by Circular Communities Scotland, has brought together 16 quite small reuse organisations into kind of an umbrella consortium to allow them to be able to supply to local authorities through this framework. And you can see how these benefits are evident through that process, and it shows that how a kind of partnership approach to kind of implementing circular economy solutions can really work. And we often find that the circular economy is really about collaboration and working together. So just wanted to touch finally really on a couple of things that Zero Waste Scotland has been working on in circular procurement. And I'm sure many of you are aware of this, which is the Procirc Project, Circular Procurement in Action. And Zero Waste Scotland's been working as a partner within this project, which is an Interreg North Sea regional project. Since 2019, actually, and it carries on to the end of next year. It's focused on certain sectors, which are on the slide. And what it's trying to do is really encourage learning across nations and sharing good practice. And what we found actually from the mentoring programme that's part of the Procirc work is that it's already helped us within Zero Waste Scotland and other partners to start to embed circular principles in procurements, and has already started to cut costs for some of the projects that we've been working on. So Zero Waste Scotland's one of 11 partners on the project, and we're able to work together to really scale up the development of circular business models through changes to public and private procurement. And so through Procirc, we've been able to run a number of pilots in Scotland. And these are some of the partners that we've been able to work with. And just by way of example, I'll pick a couple of the ones from the slide off. So we've worked with Aberdeenshire Council, really to help them implement circular principles into their kind of office space strategy for council buildings. And that's involved a number of buildings across different parts of Aberdeenshire. And then we've also been working with Glasgow Life, and that's predominantly been around training for their staff, but then also applying circular principles into the kind of design and development of the Glasgow Cycling Championships. So hopefully hoping to see the benefits of that next year when the championships are on. And then we've also produced some learning resources as well, and I just wanted to kind of flag these really to those of you who may not be aware of them, that there is a wealth of information out there for, if you're interested in circular procurement. We've developed some online e-resources, which have been based on a webinar that we ran with higher education and further education sector. And that's introducing circular approaches in procurement and specifying circular outcomes. We also have mentoring support available for procurement of, what would normally be quite carbon intensive materials, such as, construction, furniture, ICT, that sort of thing. And also just want to mention our Circular Office Supply Directory, which has only just been issued, actually, just been launched. And that is intended to help with sourcing circular products and services that are likely to be needed in a kind of an office setting. So just to finish then, just wanted to highlight the circular procurement toolkit that's available. So this is a bit of an inventory of some of the major procurement tools that we've used in some of the pilot work that I've mentioned on Procirc. And it also will allow procurers to contact the organisation that's had experience with the tools. So there's a bit of kind of peer-to-peer learning that's available through that. There's also our Procirc newsletter as well, if anybody wants to find out a little bit more. So I would encourage you to have a look at some of these materials, which are, I think, really helpful. So that's kind of brought me to a close. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that's given you a little bit of a flavour of some of the work of Zero Waste Scotland, and I really hope that it'll inspire you to find out a little bit more about how to implement circular economy principles, either kind of regionally or nationally, if you're not already doing so. So thanks, Stephen.
Louise, thank you for that. Really good presentation. Really enjoyed it. Folks, please feel free to raise your hand or pose a question in the chat box. Louise, while we're waiting, I'll probably pose a question to you. So in the conference just now, we have a breadth of talent in public sector procurement. We have over 120 professionals on the call just now. If you were to throw down a gauntlet to support the circular economy and circular procurement, what would be the big ask of that community that you would place just now?
I think, yeah, that's a big question, actually, Stephen, but it's a good one. It's a good one. So there was probably two things. I would say definitely try and find out what you can about circular economy principles and how to apply them. So really encourage them to look at the tools that are available. And secondly, I suppose, which is the big one and probably the difficult one, is thinking about actually, do we need to procure? You know, each time you approach a procurement, is procurement the only solution here? Is there another way of doing it? So just being alive to those sorts of questions and thinking about those at each stage, I think is be really helpful.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just having a look now. I think everyone's being shy or hungry.
Hopefully,
So,
I've stopped sharing my presentation. Has it gone off the screen?
you have, thank you.
That's good.
So, any questions for Louise, or am I going to wind up now?
Everybody wants an early lunch, probably.
I don't see any hands, Sarah, unless you do. So, okay, Louise, thank you very much. Really good. We'll share your material via the Academy. And we'll put your links and things up as well. And I know a number of the people on the call already have those links, but we'll share it out as well. So thank you very much for your time, Louise.
Yeah,
Folks,
that's
the end of that's the end of our session. The next session starts at 1:30, and you should have the invite already in your diary. So have a great lunch, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Louise.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.